Hello, divine friends. My name is David McLeod, and I am your life mastery coach and author of the wonderful book, A Life to Die For. I'm also one of the co-authors in the best-selling series, The Wellness Universe Guide to Complete Self-Care. Welcome to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, and fulfillment. This is episode 235, and today our topic is the wonder of oneness. And so that phrase, we are all one, it's a phrase that we often hear from spiritual teachers and people who are on a path of spiritual evolution. And the question that we're going to ask today is this just a beautiful bumper sticker platitude, or is there truth in this statement? Now, I already know what I believe, and I suspect that you have a belief in this as well, one way or the other. But I think that the concept of oneness brings us to a place of thinking about the possibility of interconnectedness with all that is, and some kind of an interconnectedness that transcends our experiences of individuality in daily life. Despite our perceptions of separateness, many people describe an inherent awareness of spiritual connection that resonates within, emphasizing a common thread of consciousness beneath our apparent distinctions. So even as science looks at this, it goes into this concept of quantum mechanics, quantum physics, and is discovering all kinds of amazing things about, the 0 point energy field or consciousness field or whatever you want to call it, out of which particles just seem to pop into existence and then disappear back into that field of consciousness. And not only that, but we have this idea of quantum entanglement in quantum physics that says that two particles can be infinitely distant from one another and still be interacting together in some way, in a way that really is very, very difficult to explain. So for this episode of Life Mastery TV, I invited back my friend and colleague, Elizabeth Kipp, who is a stress management specialist and a yoga meditation teacher. And today we're going to just dive headfirst into this really amazing and powerful topic. And we're going to uncover as much as we can about unity and oneness and all that it means in this slightly less than 1 hour program. So please join me in welcoming Elizabeth Kipp to the program. Elizabeth, come on back on camera. Let's get going.
Hi, David. So grateful to be here. Thank you for asking me on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I always enjoy our conversations, and we have had quite a few, even though not all of them were recorded. And I always find that we get to pretty deep places when we get together and chat. And so I was glad you suggested this topic because, it's something that's uppermost in my mind a lot of the time. And I just found it, I never really thought to bring it up as a formal topic before. So I'm really grateful that you did that.
Oh,
So
great. Well,
tell me a little bit about your life, and what is it about your life that has led you to be interested in this topic in the first place and to bring it up as a subject of conversation?
Oh, great question. I had chronic pain for 40 years, and partway into that, about a third of the way into that, I had surgery on my back, and the doctors said, well, there was just a lot of pain. And the doctor said, oh, well, you'll be in level 7 out of 10 pain for the rest of your life, 24/7, and you'll be in a wheelchair when you're 40. And I was like devastated by that because in that moment, I believed them because that's the doctor, the one with the knowledge, right?
He's the guy with the white coat and the stethoscope.
Well, he's got different knowledge than I do.
That's right.
And gone to school and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I have also got a background in science. So it took me 2 weeks, but I figured it out. I was very upset for 2 weeks. I felt like I was in a closet, like in this little room, this dark room, and I'm going to sneeze. No, I'm not going to sneeze. You know how that happens. And I couldn't find the door or the doorknob. There was just no light in there, but I knew it was in there somewhere. I just didn't know where, and I just kept looking. And at the end of 2 weeks, I had an epiphany. Like I went through all the stages of grief except acceptance. I never
Huh?
accepted that prognosis. And I was like, oh, he's forgotten his basic science. You know, science is probability. It's not about facts. And he said, you will.
Hmm.
So he kind of made an error there. And he also forgot that scientific paradigms shift. So that pronouncement that he gave me, that prognosis, I understood the diagnosis. The prognosis was the thing I had an issue
Okay.
with. So I realized that he was operating in a scientific paradigm that they shift, and he was telling me more about the limitation of the model that he was in than he was telling me about the healing, the capability of the human to heal.
Right.
So that was a big aha moment for me. And I asked myself this question: uh, where do we live? Well, I live in the all that is, not just in the part that science can observe, measure, and describe, which that's the only place it can comment,
Hmm.
where it can
Hmm.
observe,
Hmm.
measure, and describe. But
Right.
we live in the all that is, and we heal in the all that is. So I knew I needed to look outside of where we can observe, measure, and describe for my healing, because it wasn't happening here. They didn't have an answer other than here are your opiates and here are your benzodiazepines, which
Right.
was,
Yeah. Yeah.
that doesn't heal things. That just kind of puts a damper on all of it.
No, it makes you a customer for life.
Well, it does that, but it also makes you very sick. So
Yeah,
lots of
that's right.
problems with that.
Yep.
So um, anyway, I went on to finally heal from that, uh, and I got into a yoga practice, and I kind of woke up because I'd been on medication, I've been on opiates for a long time, and they kind of, they dampen
Sure.
everything.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I literally woke up, and um, and I really dove into my yoga practice. Um, I had a few experiences when I was actually in hospital. I had a bunch of surgeries, and some of them were pretty challenging afterwards. I had some experiences there where um, it's hard to describe, but I feel like my sense of oneness was what got me through it. I did have a meditation practice. I've been meditating since the mid 1970s. So I had that practice. It's just more powerful when you're not on medication. But
Right.
I got out of one surgery, and it was quite extensive back surgery, front and back of the spine, and to put some equipment in there, some stuff in there to kind of um, stabilize my spine. And they wouldn't give me anything but regular strength Tylenol afterwards for the pain. Everybody else on the ward was getting, was getting pain medication. I wasn't getting any. It was really challenging. And I remember, I'm kind of taking everybody to the edge here, but that's where I was at that time. Um, I remember feeling like I was on a tightrope, and I had to stay on the tightrope. I had to walk the tightrope, because if I fell to the right, I'd have a heart attack from the stress, and if I fell to the left, I'd just lose my mind. I just, so it was kind of like that's kind of the territory I was living in. And the way I stayed on the tightrope was I stayed in the present moment.
Right.
That's where I stayed.
Right. Yep.
The only reason I knew to do that was because I had a meditation practice.
Right.
Like the nurses and doctors didn't do anything except this is what you're getting. Goodbye. So there are not really much tools there, right? Um,
That's
so
really interesting. First of all, that they wouldn't have given you some kind of high-powered painkiller.
yeah,
Did they have a reason for not doing that? Were they worried
well, they
about
didn't.
healing or
Yeah,
something? Or
they didn't tell me afterwards, but they were worried that I'd leave the hospital addicted, and that they'd be liable for that.
I see.
So they were more concerned about that issue, which you can kind of heal from, than they were
Right.
about the stress that the pain puts you under in the first place.
Sure.
I kind of, I feel like that's actually when we need pain medication. When we're so stressed out, we're like at that level.
That's right.
But they disagreed with me, and I had no power. So, uh,
Yeah,
So
that's really too bad. Yeah.
I went in this other direction, which was this space. And, I've defined a very narrow kind of line or a
It's
series
called a tightrope.
or series of points in a line.
Yeah.
But the power there was the power of the present moment and consciousness holding the whole situation.
Right.
Right. So um, it's just an experience that I had. Anyway, so I work in stress management now, and I've studied trauma, and I'm in historical trauma as well. And the reason why I wanted to bring this topic forward today is because we're in this historically and currently we're in this cycle of trauma.
Hmm.
Trauma begets trauma. And my question is, how do we get beyond that cycle? We have to do something different. Remember, Einstein said, you can't solve a problem at the level of consciousness that created it, right?
Right.
And we're sitting in our solution is more, war, more war. It's just like you
That's
did
right.
this, I'm going to do that,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And that's just repeating the trauma, repeating the cycle. And I've been asking the question, how do we get outside of that cycle? And
Right.
my answer
So,
is,
so before you go any further, I first of all, I want to say thank you for sharing that story. I mean, I didn't realize. I mean, you've shared with me a little bit about this process that you went through the spine stuff, but I didn't get quite this much detail last time, and so I'm grateful that you were able to share that with me, and I'm also grateful that you found a way to deal with your pain. I really like that tightrope analogy, actually. Because what's beautiful about it is, okay, I'm here on this tightrope. I'm here on this tightrope now. I'm here now. I take a step. I'm still here on this tightrope. I'm here now. The beauty of that whole practice is, in this moment, everything is perfect. I'm neither having a heart attack nor losing my mind. Everything is perfect. That's the beauty of the present moment. And I really like that analogy. It just reminds me, yeah, that's really what we're trying to do, because you've got, in ordinary life, for most people, you've got the past on one side and you've got the future on the other. And most of the time, we're trying to juggle both sides. Well, forget about them both and just stay right here, right now. It makes a huge difference. So thank you for sharing that. The other thing I want to say is, for those of you who are here live, please feel free to post your questions or comments in the chat, and we will do our best to respond to those as we proceed. So getting back to this, you mentioned the all that is, which I think is beautiful. I use that phrase a lot myself. I have another name for it as well. I call it omnitude, meaning all that is. It's just my word for that. And this idea of oneness, of being somehow connected to all that is, well, if you're connected to it and I'm connected to it, then we are by definition connected to each other. There's just no way to avoid that truth. So the question is, how do we get people to understand that they are already, in their true nature, they're already connected and inseparable, actually, from the all that is? It's mostly the only reason most of us don't understand that, or maybe don't believe it, is because we have ego minds that create this really, really powerful story about separation. And that story is so strong that it's hard to disbelieve the illusion, right? And in fact, that's another thing that Einstein said. I think he may not have used these words exactly, but he said something like, reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one. And I really like that statement, because it captures the sense that if we rely on our ego minds to guide us, which we need to do to some degree in order to just navigate through the physical world, then what we're doing is we're denying ourselves the opportunity to not just know, but also experience our connection to all that is. And I think that's what this is really all about. And so this notion of we are all one, that's usually stated by people who have had some kind of a visceral experience of it, and they already know it to be true. And so the rest of us are looking at saying, what are you talking about? So it's a really interesting concept, something that I think we really ought to be diving into a lot more in our world, because as you say, if we look outwardly, all we see is chaos and confusion and pain and suffering happening all around us. But we don't have to be a part of that. We don't have to feed into it by allowing our own ego minds to add fuel to the fire, so to speak. So if I want to see a change in the world, then I have to elevate my own consciousness and get myself out of that level of thinking. And as you say, you can't solve a problem with the same energy that was used to create it. So I have to elevate to a higher level.
Yeah, it's kind of like what lenses am I looking through, and are they clouded, right? We need the ego to help us move along in the world. And the reason I brought the trauma piece in is because trauma, it's about disconnection. Trauma, we get separated from. Trauma happens usually in relationships, so we get separated from whoever it was that we had the experience with. We're alone with it, so we get disconnected from others. We get disconnected, maybe even from source or the infinite or whatever you want to call that energy. And we get disconnected from ourselves. We dissociate. We don't even remember who we are, right? So it's this place of forgetting, and the ego is great at forgetting oneness. Its job is survival.
That's right.
And so I have a friend that says make an amigo of the ego, and I'm like, how do you even do that? Right?
Yeah, that's a phrase that Lina Orlando uses a lot. Yeah, and but I think that the message there is more about, well, how can you befriend something that that does so much bad stuff? That's kind of the question that comes up, right? The ego has a purpose, but if we allow the ego to run the show, then it often gets out of control and it does things that are way beyond what you normally would allow to happen. And what I have learned for myself is I can fight my ego, but what's interesting is my ego fights back, and it fights dirty.
That's right. It's tricky and slippery and sly.
So what I have learned for myself is I don't fight my ego. I treat it more like a small child that just needs some loving attention. So the first thing I do with my ego is I just pay attention to it. Okay, you want my attention? I'm going to pause and I'm just going to listen for a while. Tell me what it is that's going on. And often I don't have to agree with anything that the ego mind says, by the way. I just simply say, well, thank you. Now I understand more about what's going on for you. And I appreciate so much that you are looking out for me, that you are trying to keep me safe, that you are trying to help me find my way through this world. So I'm grateful for that. And you've been around since I was a little child, and I have been learning all this stuff with you since I was a little child, and I'm an adult now. So I have stronger powers. I have greater ability to do things that I maybe didn't have when I was a little child. And I really want to have control of my own life. So I thank you for being there to support me, and I'm taking charge. See you later. So that's kind of how I approach it, it's very, very point blank. It's not judgmental. It's not mean. It's just, this is the way it is. My soul is really in charge of this. You are not. I appreciate what you do to help me, and we're going to do it the way my soul wants to do it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's amazing. That's awesome.
Well, it works really well when I remember to do it.
Yeah. The other quality, there's some characteristics of the ego, since we're there. One of the characteristics is it can't abide the present moment. So
that's right.
Constantly pulling one way or the other, and
right.
So that's one way that I can actually discern what's happening right now. Oh, that I
Yeah.
see that, right? So that's an interesting aspect of it. But this thing about uh, unity and trauma is powerful because it's this place of disconnection. And when we're disconnected, we go into these behaviors that are these default behaviors, and the ego has a field day because it's all about surviving from this moment. It's all surviving.
Right.
So this is why we get caught in the cycle of trauma. We're in this reaction, and we just keep. So we have to be able to get out of that. And the only thing that makes sense to me, and I, I'm open to plenty of other answers because bring them on. But the thing that makes sense to me is if we actually understood that we're all actually all connected in the field, and we understood that in our bones, and then took responsibility for our part of the field, that would change things.
Yeah. I
Right.
agree with you 100%. And part of the challenge is many of us go through our entire lives without ever having a visceral experience of oneness. We might have something that comes close. We might have, you know, certain kinds of experiences through life that give us the remembrance or give us a moment to remember the idea that we're all one, but it's not really a visceral experience. Now,
I hear.
I've been fortunate to have one, absolutely one certain, 100% certain visceral experience of this oneness idea. And it happened in 2003 when I was doing my New Warrior training adventure with the Mankind Project. After I'd gone through my deep process work and releasing all my anger and my rage and my sorrow, I felt this amazing, beautiful golden light of warm, unconditional love starting to fill me up. And as that happened, I was standing up in the middle of this room with all these men looking at me in this circle. And every single one of them had this beautiful, glowing aura around his body. So I could no longer tell the face or the body of the man. I couldn't be 100% sure who I was looking at. And I felt this energy. I was just connected to it. And I said, this is what they're talking about. And I realized in that moment, oh my God, if people could only experience this.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Now
saying.
they're not necessarily going to experience it by going through the same process I went through.
Hmm.
But what I try to do now is I try to help people understand that you are always connected to that essence, that oneness, even if you're not fully aware of it. And one of the ways that I regain connection to that, you've talked about meditation. Well, I do a fair bit of meditation, and every time I do, I can feel that energy just growing and building, and I just feel connected to it. So
Hmm.
we all have the capability, I believe, of realizing and waking up and remembering the truth of that oneness. But we don't necessarily all have the visceral experience of it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I understand, and I wish we taught this stuff in pre-kindergarten.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. For me, I get in meditation, and I go through some kind of shift in consciousness where I lose all the edges of my body,
Oh,
and
that's nice.
I'm just
Yeah,
just like a
I've had that
fluid.
happen a couple of times.
Yeah, it was kind of so I'm kind of this. I kind of melt into the field around me,
Right.
and that's another example of a space of oneness. So,
Yeah.
as you say, we're always connected. It's just the mind that tells us otherwise.
That's right.
And people say, "Oh, connect with God," and I'm like, "Well, we're already connected. I don't have
That's
to
right.
do
That's
anything.
right. Yeah,
There's
yeah.
no action. It's here. It's
That's
like
right.
I'm already. It's already here."
That's right.
Um, I'll tell you another example. It's a little crazy, but it's kind of interesting. So well, some of the work that I do is ancestral. Like I said, I do ancestral work, and one of the things that that I kind of came into this life with, I don't have issues with snakes at all. I find them fascinating, and I had to be taught to stay the heck away. It's like, well, these creatures are amazing. It's like, no, they're they're actually poisonous. So anyway, I had to learn that. So, but no fear there, but lots of fear around spiders. And so I had 3 times in my life I've made peace with the spiders. Once when I was 17 and wanted to start gardening, and I knew I wouldn't be able to do it because spiders are in the garden, and I was like,
Right.
we're not having a war in the garden. This is not happening. So
That's right.
I was not a war person. And then another time when I moved here to Kansas back in the early 80s. I thank God my husband was an entomologist. My husband at the time was an entomologist, and he also knew arachnids as part of that. And they had a big tarantula, which was kind of a light brown, very skinny legs, skinny body, but big. And I was freaked me out. And we also had brown recluses, which are poisonous. And so I had to make peace with the spiders all over again, which I did kind of like. I didn't really have any particular tools. I didn't know ancestral clearing at all. I just did what I could to kind of talk to the spiders, right? And get over my own fear. Because I had to learn to live with them because I wasn't going to like kill them. So, anyway, so then a couple of years ago, I had I had a friend that was living in this house that I had, and I'm living in an apartment, but he's kind of at the house, and he calls me up and he says, Lizzie, there's this huge spider in your basement and I'm not going in there. I'm like, what? And I knew it was my responsibility to get the spider and put it outside, right? And I thought, what's going on here, And I walked into the basement, and this was the largest spider I've ever seen in my life. And we're at at the latitude where we're not in the tropics. We're in Kansas, so they're not supposed
So it
to
was
be.
the size of a small horse?
This was as big as a ball jar, a wide mouth ball jar. It was this big, and
Wow.
it had a big old body. It wasn't skinny like that tarantula. It was this big thing. It was a fishing spider. I had to look it up, but it was a fishing spider. And we have a pond down from the house, but it's like what it was doing way up here on the hill. I have no idea. It got lost, right?
Blown away on the wind, maybe? Who
I
knows?
saw this spider, and my skin crawled, and every cell of my body was like, I was like, oh man, I got to make peace with the spiders again. And so I knew I had to go home and do some work. So I closed the door and I said, I'm coming back tomorrow morning. And I went home and I started doing ancestral clearing work. That kind of I actually used the ancestral clearing process that I use with clients. I used it between me and the spiders, and it was just a lot of prayer work and forgiveness for past stuff and things like that. Offering up that which is no service, that kind of stuff, like you're talking about, fear, anger, sadness, all that. And I pray, please give me the strength, And anyway, so. I mean, at that point, I was still seeing this thing, the mind. You see, the mind is making this story. Oh my God, this thing, it's sinister. It's going to get you. It's, powerful, all the stuff.
I find it interesting, actually. You're not the first person who has shared this kind of story with me. I hear quite a few people actually talking about when we somehow get to the topic of what makes you most afraid. I think spiders top out snakes for just about everybody.
Well,
I really
it's
do.
definitely in the DNA. We come in with that information for sure.
Yeah, maybe so. But I gotta say, I mean, I'm not a big fan of spiders. They don't generally scare me, but I don't hang out with them. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Well,
But I think this idea of making peace with something that scares you is a really powerful lesson that we can learn, that we can share with people. Before I go into that, though, I just wanted to say something about your meditation. This idea of having the edges of your body kind of fade away.
Mhm.
I've had that experience happen, and the way I can actually get there now One of my meditation practices is to just sit on my meditation chair or cushion or whatever. And the way rather than focusing on my breath, I will just bring my attention. I'll just try not to have any attention on anything. And then I'll just say, okay, what's going on in my body? And then maybe I'll notice a little pressure on my shoulder. So I say, great. I'll bring my attention there and just watch it, not have to do anything with it, and just wait. And before I know it, that whatever that was attracting my attention just kind of fades away. And then maybe I'll get something on my knee. Oh, there it is. I just keep going. And I do this over and over. And after a while, I don't know how long, maybe 5 minutes or something, I no longer feel anything in my body. It's like my body just isn't there anymore. It's there and it's just doing what it does, but it's not attracting my attention anymore. And now I can just get present to what's really going on in my life. It's a powerful way to meditate that I've learned, and it works really well. So if you want to have the experience of having the edges of your body disappear, that's one way you might be able to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I focus on the breath, and it leads me right into that space.
Yeah.
Just
so,
anyway.
But I think I really like your story about how the mind can find the pattern of the spider and somehow relate it to something that happened in the past. This is how the mind works. The ego mind works. It's always relating to stuff that happened in the past, and then it's projecting that into the future to say, this is going to happen to you again if you do this. So that's why you're often feeling the fear in your body not to do something.
Well, it's also a reflection of our disconnection, because we're totally caught by the ego.
That's right.
So I went home, I did the work, I get up the next morning, I had a friend who went with me. I get the widest, biggest ball jar I could find with the widest mouth and a piece of paper. And my friend walked behind me, and I opened the door, and I'm like, where's the spider? And I found the spider, and I looked at the spider, and it was so interesting because for the first time in my life, I saw God in the spider, and all my fear just, there was no fear in the room. It was just connection. And so I just took my ball jar and my piece of paper, and I popped it over, and the spider, I got it over him, and he started moving, and I just moved with it, and there was none of that. It was just whoop, and paper underneath it, caught it, took it outside, let it loose, and it was a beautiful, my God, in the sunlight, it was absolutely gorgeous, which was why I was able to identify it later. But it was really cool going from I'm completely freaked out in every cell in my body to oneness with the thing I was freaked out about.
Yeah.
Because all that sense of connection just disappeared, which is a real testament to the work of doing kind of the clearing work, and being willing to face the skin crawling and all the creepy crawlies in my own mind.
Right? That's right. Yeah. It's really a very, very interesting and powerful experience, I think, to have that sense of fear that's just kind of making you, I don't know, possibly freezing, flying, or fighting, whatever it is that's going on. And then having the presence of mind to be able to say, okay, I know what's going on now, and this is just me having it's my body, not me. It's my body having a physical reaction to what my mind is telling it. And if I identify with my body, then I say, oh, this is me being afraid, But if I understand that my body is just a vessel that I happen to use while I'm on this planet, then I can say my body is having a reaction.
As is my mind in the story.
Yeah, I am still a divine, magnificent, unlimited spiritual being of light and love, and it's my body that's having this story, right? And I choose to rise above the story, and I choose to live from that place of oneness that's within my heart.
Yeah, I had to find another perspective.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in the middle of it, it might be hard to do. But the thing is, and this is something that I truly believe. It's like anything else. It's like if you play poker, well, you're probably not going to be a very good poker player at first, you know? But the more you play, the better you get at the game.
Mhm.
It's like anything else. I mean, you might not be a very good meditator at first. You know, you might find your mind chattering too much, and you get maybe frustrated because you're not getting to that calm, peaceful place that they say you're supposed to get to. Well, that's okay. You know, just come back and do it again sometime. You know, try it and try it and try it. Just keep doing it, and before you know it, it'll become second nature. So it's the same thing with having that visceral reaction in the moment. You know, you could say, if you once you've done this a few times, you can say, "Oh yeah, this is my body having a reaction to something that my mind is doing. Well, I'm going to just stay grounded and present." You might sooner or later you'll be able to do that. We'll all be able to do that. It's just a question of practice.
Mhm. Yeah, it's focus. Where's my attention? where's my Where's my attention?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyway,
one of the
so
things that I brought up during my little intro was about science and how science has been bringing us closer to this idea of oneness. Why don't you say a little bit about that? How do you feel about, the whole quantum physics thing and what they're teaching us?
I was so grateful to finally meet quantum physics. my my whole world finally made sense. The first time I
Right.
saw a presentation on quantum physics, I was like, "Aha! Now everything fits."
That's right.
Oh my god. Anyway, yeah, so very important discoveries for me, I thought. And I use that. It's important. I don't do woo woo very well. It's got to have grounding somewhere for me. Like I have
Right.
to have a practical application to woo woo, or else it's just going to go right over my head. That's just kind of the way I am, and stuff does. It just goes right over my head and keeps going. But the quantum physics world is a tool and very powerful because, again, like where we started, the present moment, it tells us that in the present moment, we can access past, present, and future. In the present moment, we have access to oneness. So it's already here. It's just that if we're present, and what lens are we looking through? Or again, are we looking through the ego lens? Are we looking through, only what science can measure, can observe, measure, and describe? Do we think there might be something more? Right? Are we open to that? Are we open to an experience that hasn't already been defined?
Right.
Uh, anyway, quantum physics opens that door for us, and the ancestral work all of a sudden made sense to me as well, because I could see the patterns in my own lineage, and you see the patterns in everybody's lineage, and you're in this work enough, everybody's got it. And you know, uh, DNA comes in. We have information in the system. We've got all kinds of information from the past in the system, right, in the mind, body, spirit system.
Right.
So, from a sciencey point of view, DNA, genetics, epigenetics, quantum physics, it all merges in this present moment space. So, um, we're not only just connected in the here and now in the quantum field in this moment together, all of us now. We're connected into the past, into the ancestral line as well in the present moment, which is why you can do ancestral clearing work. That's why it works, because there's a connection there. We just honor that.
Yeah.
I don't know
You
if
know,
that
I
makes.
I, I remember years ago, even I mean, quantum physics has been studied probably since the late 1920s. But it hasn't really become a mainstream topic until fairly recently, I would say, like maybe even the 1980s or 1990s, in that time frame.
Yeah, that's when
And
I was introduced to it. And I was
yeah,
like, yes.
I, I remember reading several books in the late 1990s and then in the early 2000s. One of them was The Tao of Physics by somebody Capra, not Frank Capra, that was the
Yeah,
director.
I
But
know. I had to read that a couple of
yeah,
years ago for yoga teacher training. Yeah,
it's a great book, The Tao
helpful
of
book.
Physics.
Yeah.
And then another book that I read that was really, really awesome for me, it was called The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot.
Hmm.
And that really expanded my mind in ways that I hadn't expected. And then following that, I got introduced to Lynn McTaggart, who
Uh-huh.
wrote that book, The Field.
Yeah.
And she spoke to many like quantum physicist kind of scientists
Uh-huh.
about their perspective on this, and that's a brilliant book too. So
Hmm.
those three books combined, I think, really help for people like you and me who maybe don't have quite the mathematical or physics background to be able to fully understand everything. It
Hmm.
really helps to open up that field, and all of a sudden, I tell you, when you read those books, it it'll mess up your mind enough that you start thinking of things in a whole new way.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah. We get reordered.
that's right.
Mind gets reordered. Actually, the concepts that we're talking about are almost paradoxical because they're very simple and very um, compound, complex at the same time, to the point where the mind can't really get it because it's just too big for the mind. So
Right.
this is where it's important to have like a practice like not just meditation, but a practice like meditation where you can have some other kinds of experiences where you can touch that space. Flow state is another space where you experience that. Um, so there's all kinds of different ways to get into flow state. Um, right. So that's I don't and I think the quantum physicists have actually talked about that, the flow state thing.
Right.
Also, there's
Mhm.
like the brain scientists have talked about gamma, uh, that particular brainwave formation is this peak experience kind of thing where we have access. So it's kind of you talk about consciousness and we talk about raising consciousness. We want to change the consciousness. We're actually changing the brainwave is what we're doing in that
Right.
space, and it allows us a different ways of perceiving the world. Yeah.
Yeah. This is all very, very fascinating. I mean, I've read so many books, and this idea of consciousness is something else that I'm very, very fascinated with. And I've read just about everything by David R. Hawkins. I don't know if you've read his books,
Hmm.
but he started with that book called Power versus Force,
Yeah.
and that that is where I was first introduced to his map of consciousness idea, and which of course describes consciousness as an exponential structure where as you increase in one level of consciousness, you're actually increasing by a factor of 10 rather than just a linear increase. And so that means that any one person who increases by that one level offsets the negativity of 10 people below him or her. And so if you can increase multiple levels over the course of your life, you are having a major impact on the consciousness of the world because the average consciousness starts to go up. And he also says that there's a level at which we switch from the falsehood or the force idea into the power idea or truth. And that's at the level of 200, which the world, he says, this book was written in 2000, I think. Uh, at that time, he claimed that the world itself calibrated at about 206. So he had just gone through the threshold of switching away from the force side of things and moving more into the power side of things, and also switching from falsehood into truth. And what's beautiful about that is, I mean, I can see evidence of that around me now. I don't fully agree with everything he said in his map of consciousness. I think that there's some stuff in there that doesn't make sense scientifically, but that doesn't mean that the whole thing is wrong.
Mhm.
It's like the theory of relativity. Einstein knew that there were errors in that theory of relativity. He just proposed it and said trying to explain something, right? And that's part of the whole purpose of science is to try and explain something using whatever model you create. And of course, you may introduce some false assumptions that maybe help to explain the thing, but eventually those false assumptions are going to come back and bite you somewhere else in
Oh,
the
yeah,
theory. So
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, I mean, there are so many sources of great information that people can look at. Some are very scientific, some are a little more esoteric, some are maybe pseudoscientific. I don't dismiss something just because it's pseudoscientific, you know? Just because we haven't necessarily figured out a way of fitting it into our scientific worldview doesn't mean it's wrong, you know? So there are many pseudo scientific theory. For example, iridology. I think that's what it's called, where people look at your irises to tell you something about your health. Most people try and dismiss that as pseudoscience. Well, if it's just pseudoscience, why is it that it works for some people? You know? Or then you get someone like Rupert Sheldrake, who wrote about the morphogenic field.
Right. I know his work.
Fantastic books. I mean, this guy is
Mhm.
brilliant.
Mhm.
And yet there are people out there like Richard Dawkins, for example, who try to dismiss him as another pseudoscientist.
Well, this is all part of the scientific uh, process. Is
Yeah,
we keep pushing the edge and pushing the edge and having a conversation and pushing the edge, and hopefully we're in discourse with one another, and it's a generative one and not a one from a place of ego, and
right.
we learn. You know,
Yeah,
again, science can only observe, can only comment on that which it can observe, measure, and describe. But we live in the all that is, not just in that part. We live
that's
in the all.
exactly right. Yeah.
So so there's more going on than just what it can what it can comment on.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's like, trying to explain a near-death experience. Well, the only person who can explain it is the one who's gone through it.
Well, I've had three of them, and I'm not sure I can explain it. I can give you a description of
Right,
what I
but you can
did.
explain it better than I can.
I can't. I it was very interesting, but it was such an experience. I don't. Yes, I can explain my experience better than you can because I had it, but
Right.
um, yeah, to try and explain that experience to somebody who's here on planet Earth is in this plane is it's difficult because I had difficulty. I mean, it was kind of like I actually left this planet and dimension and the whole
Oh,
thing,
cool.
and I went out to wherever that is, and I came back. And when I came back, I was like, "Oh, here I am again." It was just like really
Did I
different.
really make this decision?
So, and I did. I literally that's what happened. I got there and I said, "Hey, my mission's not finished. I got to go back," and and I went back. Three
Right. Yeah.
times.
Well, that's pretty amazing. I have another friend. In fact, a fellow that I've interviewed on this show a couple of times. His name is Kellen Flukiger, and he had a near-death experience as well. Fascinating to hear him talk about it. But what he got out of it was a clear and total understanding of our oneness with one another, of our
Oh,
oneness with
yeah, well,
all that
that
is.
was another piece. It was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, now I get it." It's a very, the thing is that it's always here. We're always in it. It's kind of like the fish is looking for water, and we're the
Right.
fish, right?
He's in
We're
the
always
water already. That's right.
we're
Yeah.
always yeah, we're
Yeah.
always in it, but the ego is so, powerful that, and our sense of separation seems to serve us on enough levels so that we have to keep remembering, which is why we have a daily practice. Well, it was why I have a daily. I don't know about you, but that's why I have a daily practice. It reminds me,
Exactly. Yeah.
right, to you know, it reminds me that I'm the witness of my experience. I'm not my experience.
Yeah.
I'm not
Right.
my pain. I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my whatever. I'm having an experience of all that, but it's not who I truly am. And
Yeah.
for me, healing, finding my way through healing from all that chronic pain, it was really helpful to know that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so I notice we're getting close to 50 minutes here, and I know that you said you would like to leave a couple of minutes early. So I am going to honor that request, and I'm going to ask you if you have. First of all, I want to say thank you again for being here. I really enjoy our conversations, and I would like to invite you, if you have something you'd like to say to the audience, to the people who are here, to the people who are watching the recording, about how they can maybe connect more deeply to their sense of oneness.
Well, I would start with the breath, just sitting quietly with the breath and just keep your attention on the breath and see what happens. I mean, let's just keep it really simple because it is.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just put your attention on the breath, nice, long, and deep. Keep that exhale as long or longer than the inhale. Repeat. See what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's important to understand, because one of the reasons that meditation teachers recommend focusing on the breath is because the breath is happening right now.
Yeah.
It's not happening yesterday and it's not happening tomorrow. It's happening right now.
That's right.
That's the reason, you know? And it's a very powerful reminder. So when a beautiful way I found to just focus on my breath is to notice the quality as I'm inhaling. How do I feel? I feel the coolness as the air goes through my nose. I notice that it goes down my throat and down into my lungs, and I can just feel myself expanding. Just notice all that stuff, because every little detail that you're noticing is happening right now. And so all of it is about being in the present moment. You're
Mhm.
not necessarily judging it. In fact, hopefully you aren't judging it at all. You're just observing without judgment.
That's
And
right.
that's a powerful way to get really into the present moment. And when you
Yeah.
do that, I think I
People
think
say
you're
to
right. I
me,
think that being in the present moment is the fastest route to connecting to oneness.
yeah, I agree. And I'll just say this, that people say to me from time to time, well, it's so boring. And I'm like, boredom is a gateway. Boredom, if you reach boredom in your meditation, you've reached another level. Stay with the boredom because it's a doorway, and the doorway will open if you stay into this big rich field. You won't All of a sudden you'll realize how rich and powerful the present moment truly is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have an alternate perspective on that. If I hear myself saying this is boring, I know that's my ego mind. My ego
Well, that's
mind
true. Yeah.
wants the attention. My ego mind wants the
Yes.
drama.
Yes. That's true.
That's and so
That's
it's
true.
not really boring. It's just less agitation, less activity, less, you know, all this dancing chaos in my mind. That's
Mhm.
really what it is. When the boredom sets in, you're really settling the ego mind. It's getting quieter and quieter and quieter in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're also changing your brain waves.
That's right.
You're
Yeah.
actually changing when it gets hard in meditation, you're like, I can't do this, or I want to get up and go away, or whatever. It's like enough, right? When it gets like that, or I'm bored, or whatever the resistance is, that's when the brain starts changing.
I
Hang in
agree.
there, stay,
Yeah.
because the magic is happening.
Yeah.
Thanks so
Well,
much,
and
David.
one final word I'll say on that is that it, just because you have a thought, oh, this is boring, or I want to get away, or I want to do this or that or the other thing. Here's what I like to do whenever that happens. Oh, what an interesting thought. Thank you. And then just come back to my breath,
That's a good one.
because you're going to have thoughts. There's no way you can stop them. All
Yeah.
right. I'm sorry. I'm taking up too much of your time here. I just want to say thank you again for being here. I just want to close out this today and say thank you to everyone who has shown up. And thank you also for watching the recording if you're doing that. Um, so I just like to remind you that no matter where you are in your life, you are one with all that is. So thank you for watching today's program. And remember, you can catch the recordings of this and all my other episodes on my website at Life Mastery TV. And my final closing message to you is to remember to practice the life mastery mantra every single day. And it goes like this. It's real simple. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So until we meet again, I am David McLeod, your life mastery coach, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. And I'll see you next time on Life Mastery TV. Bye-bye.